everyone. Welcome to Lauren De Laguna, and I have a very exciting guest tonight. Tonight, I am accompanied by Bricksuit. Bricksuit, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. You said that you had a little bit of COVID before we started. Are you feeling
Well,
better?
not COVID. I had yesterday. I had like one of those things come on you where you're not really feeling well. You kind of have light fever and some body aches, but I went out and made sure I could still smell and taste things, and I could, but I got my little COVID test lollipop, and I was negative. So um,
Have you
I'm
ever
all,
had COVID?
I'm all in the clear. No, I've never had it.
Ooh, one of the few ones. I think everybody, like most
You
people, have
know,
had it by now.
all the rallies I've been to, all the hands I've shaken, all the photos I was with people, I never got it.
Yeah, so can you tell me what started your rallies? Was Trump the first guy that you started going to rallies for?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's see. I, I got there's a long version of the story, a short version, and a medium. So I'm going to tell the
Well, we
medium.
have, okay.
Hopefully, it'll be the Goldilocks version. So um, I was never really involved politically since, basically prior to Trump running, I was really apolitical. The last time I voted for president was 1984 for Reagan. And after
Wow.
that election, I didn't vote again in a municipal or a state or a federal election until 2018. So, I became a Trump supporter. I mean, basically, when Trump was running in 2016, I'm living in California. I'm a conservative. I know my vote doesn't matter so much in that regard.
Mm.
And, I wasn't even registered. You know, did I want him to win? Absolutely. I wanted Hillary to lose. And I can be honest, at the time, I wasn't convinced that Trump would be a good president. I
Hmm.
really wasn't. I can remember thinking, you know, I really don't want Hillary Clinton to win. Trump wins. The worst he can be is ineffective, and then we have to reevaluate how we choose our politicians. Little did I know that I was going to be really proven wrong on that. He turned out, in my estimation, to be a fantastic president.
Yeah.
And, really, like, I think his third and fourth day in office was when he got us out of the Paris Climate Accords and the Trans Pacific Partnership. And I was like, wow, he is really doing the things that he said he was going to do. And especially the Trans Pacific Partnership, because I know that was just, multinational, all around the Pacific Rim, hundreds of thousands of hours of labor and give and take and legislation. And by and large, it was bad for America. It was basically
Yeah.
ceding a lot of our rights to
Hmm.
other governments and their agencies. And he just made it go away. And I couldn't believe that happened. That's when I really started paying attention.
I
So,
mean, you have to be following politics pretty closely, though, to even
oh,
know
I
about
was
that.
yes, I was following politics, but I was not actively involved. And I think that at that point in time, where I was following politics was probably the peak of Reddit. Are the Donald on Reddit, a
Mm.
fabulous subreddit before all the censoring happened, before all the shadow banning happened on Reddit, before it was sent away. That's how I came to really start following Donald Trump mostly. And then, so I was involved in the following issues, but when I say I wasn't involved, I wasn't involved in terms of actively voting, campaigning,
Mm.
going to rallies, nothing like that. Nothing, basically, as a spectator sport. And was I aware of the issues? Yes. But was I actively participating in them? No. So I started, I don't know, do you remember that meme that came out that President Trump posted of him wrestling the CNN guy? It's like,
Oh yeah. Well,
it
it
was
was from his like actual time wrestling. Yeah, I think I know exactly what you're talking
right. So there's like, he's like, and instead of him throwing down whoever it was he was wrestling against, it's like with a CNN head on it. And he posted that
about. Yeah.
around July 4th, sometime around the July 4th weekend of 2017. And then CNN threatened to dox the Reddit user who made that meme. And that, ironically, is what triggered me to get online and start memeing myself. Because, by that time I was definitely a Trump supporter, definitely 100% on board. And to see CNN come out and threaten to dox somebody just because they made a meme that happened to become popular and get retweeted by the president, I just thought that was ridiculous. So that's when I actively started memeing.
And you're a very famous, like, you have a big Twitter following, right? And where could people follow you?
Best place to follow me is on Twitter. It's at brick_suit. So you have brick suit with a little underscore dash in the middle of it.
Okay, and so you started going out on Twitter and
yeah. So I was on
memes.
Twitter now. Now I started memeing first just on Reddit, and eventually did join Twitter with a small account that was like under my my Reddit name, and then here we've got the
Yeah,
excellent.
that's the
Pulling it up.
meme.
Yes. Yeah. So this is the one. And and so, to see somebody get threatened with being exposed for that meme is just incredible. So I was just memeing, and I was meeting people on Reddit, and we would post stuff, and it was, it was great times pro-Trump then. And then around 2018, January, you started to see really large accounts across the board. Social media started to fight back. Okay. Reddit was getting cracked down on. People were being deplatformed across the board. You'd see Facebook accounts deactivated, YouTube accounts demonetized, Twitter accounts banned. I mean, that's when we started losing people like Alex Jones, Stefan Molyneux, so many people, just so many different accounts. And at that time, I started thinking, well, if we're not going to be able to have free speech on the internet, if we can't have First Amendment rights on the internet, which I understand we don't really have them, they're not guaranteed to us, I decided that I would start memeing in real life. I would go out of my way to be pro-Trump in real life in a way that wouldn't be normal. So I would get a Make America Great Again hat, and I would go to farmers markets, and I would go to baseball games, and I would go to, county fair, and I would just go any place where I knew there's gonna be a lot of people. I just kept the hat in my car, and when it was time, I was always just put it on and just go out there. And because in public, nobody can really, there are no terms of service in public except the Constitution. You can't say, no, you can't wear that here. And one of the things I remember really having a good time was I wore the whole thing to Comic-Con in San Diego, and people loved it, and they would just be like, "Oh, I love your costume!" And then they'd like, "Wait, you're not really a Trump supporter, are you?" And I go, "Yes, I am." And you can just see their face just go like, "Oh, now I hate you." It was like that. So that's the background. That's where I'm at. Before I started wearing the suit, I skipped because that was after the suit came after the rally. But so I'm in this period where I'm wearing just the hat, going out and just basically wearing the hat, still posting on Twitter. And I had a vacation with my dad that was coming up, and I was going to be flying back east, meeting my dad at Dulles Airport in DC, and then we were going to drive up to Pennsylvania for a convention. Okay. And I thought, man, if I'm going to go in DC, I need something more than just a MAGA hat to trigger the leftists that I'm going to see there. I need more. I need more than just a hat. And I'm thinking, well, what can I get that would just be, better than just wearing a hat? And somehow I came up with the idea of a wall suit, and I typed into a search engine, and this came up, and I got it off Amazon. And
beautiful.
Yeah, I just figured I'm going to wear it. It's going to be a one-time thing. I'm going to wear it out there to DC. Maybe I'll, wear it on the mall or something. And, and that's it's supposed to be that's all it was going to be, a one-off type of thing. And the day before I left San Diego, the day before my flight left, President Trump announced a rally in Montoursville, Pennsylvania.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, yeah, exactly. Right. So I'm looking at, wait a minute, how close is it to where I'm going to be at? So it turns out it's 120 miles away from where the convention I was at with my dad was. It was after the convention was over. I still had like 2 days left at the tail end of the vacation. So it fit perfectly and I was able to make it. And I went there, camped out overnight. I think I was third in line. I got there about midnight. And the next day I got a spot, I got a great spot. I was right in the front of the rail and beautiful rally setting. It was an airport rally. It was outdoors. The sun was setting. The clouds were really dramatic. It was really, really very cool. And that is the day when President Trump called me up on stage. And that was, so here I had the suit just for that purpose of trolling people going into Dulles. And then it turned out that meant I had it when I was in Pennsylvania. And that's how I came to be wearing the suit.
That's a very cool story. That's so exciting. And so then you just kept rocking the suit because it became your symbol.
Yeah, how do you really put that away? Just like, it was weird. It's like I was talking with my brother after it, and he's, dude, you put your hand on the president. And I'm like, no, I didn't. I just shook hands with him. I just shook his hand. He said, no, you put your hand on his shoulder. And I had to look at YouTube. I didn't know what was going on because really that whole process of getting up on stage, out of body experience, really, I don't remember much about it. I remember, okay, the president's calling me and people are shoving me on the shoulder. You got to get up there. You got to get up there. And I'm climbing over the railing and they have like a flag bunting on the railing. And I can remember thinking, don't step on the flag. And then as I'm going over, don't fall down.
Could you imagine CNN? Wow. Trump supporters just stepping on the American flag at Trump rallies. This is what Trump supporters do now.
Or falling on my butt or doing something like that, something, crazy. But I don't remember. I honestly don't have firsthand memories of what happened after that until I came off the stage, with the exception of, I remember telling the president that I was from San Diego and that we really needed the wall. I remember saying that, but I don't remember what he said to me initially. It just went, it was just, like I said, it was an out of body experience. Now, a lot of the details that I have from that interaction are literally from watching the tapes on YouTube later. And so then I go home and I'm like thinking about it, and my brother, I'm somehow Fox and Friends tracked me down via my brother because I was tagged on some social media posts of his. So I ended up doing a segment on Fox and Friends like 2 days later. And then I'm like, yeah, well, what do? Do you just put the suit in a closet, or do you use it for what I was already aligned politically? I was already in support of the president. So what I did is I started a brand new Twitter account under Brick Suit and just went forward from there.
That's awesome. That's a great story. And how many rallies do you think you've been to since this has happened?
I'm going to have to sit down and really count. But I think I've probably been to somewhere between 40 and 50 rallies.
Wow.
Some people really keep track, and I don't. I don't really keep track really closely, but I could be wrong. I think probably the best answer is to say somewhere around 40.
Do you consider like CPAC to be a rally, or
no? Well, no.
Do you go to CPAC and America Fest?
I've never been to CPAC, although I'm planning on attending this year. I've been to America Fest for TPUSA twice. So a rally, a rally technically is when President Trump is doing a presidential rally or he's appearing on behalf of other candidates. So he might be at a Kerry Lake rally. He might be at, a rally for Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania, something like that. So those are the official rallies. And then there are other things where he's speaking at a TPUSA event. I did see him once in Phoenix, where he was speaking at an event for a introduction of the candidates who are running in Arizona. So, but in terms of and when I say rallies, I'm not talking, just every time that I've seen him speak. So when I say 40 rallies, I mean 40 of the large scale political rallies or speeches that he is giving where he's the headliner for a political venue.
Now, for most of those rallies, do you do the whole waiting overnight thing, trying to be first in line, trying to get to the front every time?
It evolved into that, and it evolved into that for two reasons. So the first rally I went to was in Las Vegas, and I thought, if I get there 4 hours early, I'll be good. 4 hours, right? What did I know then, right? So I'm driving from San Diego. I get there 4 hours early. The line is already just so long,
Right,
I'm
yeah.
super bummed, but met a lot of people in line. It was very fun. I get in and I'm probably about 40 or 50 people deep inside the convention center. And, the rally was still incredible. It was an electric atmosphere. And then after it was over, I went up to the people in the front and I said, hey, how long ago, how soon did you get in line? How long have you been waiting in line to see this? And, they were saying 8, 9 hours. And I'm just like mentally filed that away. And the next rally I had an opportunity to go to was in Mesa, Arizona, where he was supporting Martha McSally when she was running for Senate in 2018. And I went to that rally and I got there at midnight the day before. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah, so midnight the day before. This is the second rally. I don't have the suit yet. I hadn't yet bought it, but I met a group of people there, the front row Joes, who were, who had already been to many more rallies than I had been to, than I've been to now. I mean, they'd been going to them for a long time, and that was the first rally that I got early enough to get up on the front row, and simultaneously that changed two things for me. It's worth it to get up there in the front. That's my goal going to a rally. And, you've got to get there a certain amount early to do that. And then later on, after I had the suit and after I was already known as a supporter of President Trump, I would then go to a couple of rallies where, I was like 6th in line, or I was like 10th or 20th. And I don't know how to really say this. The press coverage at the time, they would come up and they really only wanted to talk to the people who were first in line. And they would want to, they're writing their newspaper stories, they're doing their radio interviews. And it's like, okay, who's first in line? Why'd you get here? What's important to you? What's this? And it's kind of a crapshoot because you've got a lot of people who are very, very supportive of the president, but they do tend to have different reasons that they support him. And while that support is genuine, you might have somebody at the front of the line and they're now doing a TV interview or a radio interview, and the topic they're covering is an important one that's important to them. But if you were to list it in the scope of things that the administration at the time was emphasizing, it really would be a low level thing. So, I started thinking, well, if I go there early and I camp out overnight, all right, I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to meet people. It's going to be fun. And I'm going to be able to be there at the front. And then I'm going to get people to interview me. And, I would be looking at what the Trump administration was putting out, what Trump is tweeting, what they're emphasizing. So when I got asked questions, I pretty much already knew what the topics were going to be addressed at that rally. And there was no official communication going on. I was someone who's paying attention, but I just felt like, if somebody's going to be giving an interview to the press, it might as well, I'm a good person to do it,
Yeah, absolutely you are.
And it works out because the press, they see me, they see dressed like this, they have no idea who I am. They just figure, hey, here's some joker. Let's go talk to him. And then I would actually have reasonable arguments and reasonable takes. And I was successful in getting a viewpoint that was very pro-Trump across.
So how many times did you end up talking to press?
To press?
Yeah, like in the front of the line scenario.
Hundreds. I mean,
really?
honestly,
Wow.
look, I could be at a rally like 2 days early, and in that instant, I mean, like I would maybe do in the 2020 campaign, leading up to the 2020 campaign, possibly 20 interviews before the rally starts.
Oh,
with
wow.
various TV stations. You had international media, you had national media, you had local newspapers, local radio stations, and then even just like regional media too. So it could be a lot, up to 20 interviews easily.
That's very impressive. Was there anything that you said on television that you wish you didn't say, or everything went smoothly in all of your interviews?
I don't know if it really went smoothly, but it all went pretty well. I think.
Did anyone try to catch you or like make you
Oh
slip
yeah,
out?
oh yeah, oh. If there was one interview that never got aired, and it never got aired because I was so good at it. Okay, so this was an interview at Tulsa. This is a Tulsa, Oklahoma rally. So this is the first rally after rallies started again after they were paused for COVID. And I think I got there 4 days early, and I was within the first group of people, and we were just camped out for days. I mean, we were camped out. I had a hotel room for my suitcase and my luggage, but I would sleep on the sidewalk, with everybody else. So,
do you have like a tent?
We had pitch tents, yeah. So sometimes
you could just like put a tent out there and then go into a hotel.
Well, if you have a tent, then you're technically camping. So it really depends. Like sometimes they don't let you camp. Like there was a rally in New Mexico that I went at, and it was private land. You couldn't camp there, so there was no camping. But we successfully told the police, well, we're just sitting in chairs. We're not camping. We don't have a tent. We don't have sleeping bags. We're just sitting in chairs. So they let us stay because we were just sitting in chairs. So back to this Tulsa one. Good Morning America was there, and they were doing interviews, and they were trying to do gotcha interviews because I don't know if you remember, but BLM was really active in Tulsa for that rally, and there were a lot of threats towards the rally. And honestly, those threats contributed towards the poor attendance, or not poor attendance, but attendance was lower than it was forecast. And really the threat of BLM activism during that summer, in which, BLM violence was endemic in America, really dissuaded people from attending. And so Good Morning America was doing some interviews, and they were just trying to catch everybody they were interviewing about, well, what about, aren't you afraid of catching COVID? Aren't you afraid of transmission of disease? And I just really just turned it back. So, well, it doesn't seem to be an issue on all these protests that are going around where things are being burned and businesses are being ransacked. I mean, nobody seems concerned about the marches that lead to those. There doesn't seem to be any concern about BLM protests. So why should there be a concern here? So, and they had the on-air talent who was doing the interviewing, and then the producer would feed her questions to read to me. And I didn't fail on any of them. My responses were so good that I didn't give them what they want, and so they never aired it. I wish that I had recorded that, and then I could have played it later. But let's just say I got to be very good at it, and because you can imagine that most people who are interviewed on camera at a rally, they're giving the first interview they've ever given, and like many things, the more times you do it, the better you get at it. So
this
I
has
think,
made you a better public speaker, and a
oh,
better
absolutely,
presenter, and a
absolutely.
better debater.
Oh, I can't say that debate is actually a skill that happens there. I just think that I'm able to convey ideas that are related to a campaign succinctly and do it in a way that is enabled it to be used in a newscast, to provide a soundbite, so to speak. You get an idea of what the news companies are looking for, and you just don't want to get lost in the weeds. You want to be yourself, and you want to appear natural, which I am, which is easy for me because I'm not acting. I'm not acting as a Trump supporter. I am a Trump supporter. People think I get paid to do this. No, I go out and I do it because it's fun. I mean,
Yeah, what drives you to do it, and like how many hours a day and how many days a year do you spend doing it?
well, I'm always doing something regarding it with politics. I mean, even if I'm not out physically doing something, I'll be involved online. But you can imagine people have hobby like they like to go on cruises, or they like boating, or they like off-roading, or they have a Jeep that they like to take uh, out into the off-road trails. Well, I view the money that I spend going to rallies as basically a hobby like that. And so, while it's extensive, it's something I enjoy, and I have time for it because I don't have a TV, so I don't spend the usual amount of time people watching television spend each week.
Well, that's great. I have to admit, TV is an addiction, and it's better to not be addicted to it.
TV is great. You're 100% right. I mean, like, what are they? 85-inch screens now, and 4K, and the colors are fantastic, and the sound's amazing. I mean, it's just I would watch like the same movies over and over again, like watch The Usual Suspects for the 30th time or something like that if I had a big screen TV.
So you're super involved in politics, but it's not just Trump, right? You're like a Republican in general, but you said that you didn't really get involved in voting that much, like between Reagan and Trump. So
yeah, but not just not much, but not at all. So not all. I mean, I've completely given up on politics because I had this kind of naive view coming out of high school about what politics was. The politicians really worked for the people, worked for the voters. And then that was actually what I was studying in college. And I realized it was more politicians to lobbies to corporations and back to politicians. And it was not, the public was really not involved in that at all. And that kind of soured me on politics. And so while I still had interest in politics, I didn't actively pursue it. And am I solely a pro-Trump protagonist? No. And I think that the reason I gravitated towards President Trump is really what's come to be known as his America First policies. Those really resonated with me. It's a set of policies that just made sense to me, and I still think they make sense. And they were the type of things that I always felt American politicians should be doing, taking care of the needs of its citizens first before sending billions of dollars overseas. And border integrity always was a strong issue with me. And so naturally, Trump's border wall was something that I supported, and that's how the genesis of the brick suit is really that issue as well.
So we have an awesome super chat here from Sheepy God OG who wants to ask you a question. When you can see this persona brick suit, were you trying to look like Gavin McInnes, special needs twin, or is that just a bonus?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, that is rude.
It's a little backhanded. It's a little backhanded. I did put up a meme. I'll tell you about a meme after I demonstrate for a little bit. So you can put the mustache down like this, and then you're like Seb Gorka. You can put it up like this, and now it's kind of Gavin McInnes, but Gavin has full beard on the
You
sides too.
can't,
So
you can't
Gavin
say
has a different
Gorka.
style.
You
So this
can't
is
say Gorka without saying Gorka. You have
well,
to.
I'm not going to look. I'm just not. It's such a deep pit to step into, even attempt to emulate his vocal tones. I'm not going to try and do it. I'm not going to try and
I think you
impersonate
look
Duffy.
beautiful. Yeah,
So,
I think it's a great look. I'm really digging it. I love my little troll chat.
so I did a little meme here, and I'll have to do. I posted a meme on Twitter this week, and it was kind of a visual meme. It was.
We can pull it up. Henry, can you go to Bricksuit's Twitter, please, and we'll pull up whatever.
It's under beard identification. It'll be under beard identification, and it'll just show 4 types of beards.
This is very important. Can you teach us the 4 types of beards?
Well, the 4 types of beards are Seb Gorka, Gavin McInnes, Bricksuit, and Paul Pelosi.
Yeah. The hammerhead brick. Yeah, so this is your beautiful Twitter account.
I just don't know how far. Yeah, I don't know how far deep it is though, but.
Well, anything that you want to point out to us while we're scrolling is also fine.
Yeah,
so, anything that I want to, another thing while he's scrolling, I wanted to talk to you about the Harmeet Dillon and what happened there with her election. Do you know why she lost? So she was running for RNC chair. Do you know why she lost or what happened there?
Well, the reason she lost is because she didn't get enough support from the state. The state representatives for the Republican committee. But I think it's significant to look at it this way. The RNC voting is determined by 3 representatives from each state and each territory for a total of 168 representatives. And they vote in secret, so you can't really tell who casts a vote for what. But considering that she started her candidacy for RNC chair in essentially late November, early December of last year, and the election was in January 26th. The fact that she cleaved off 50 votes is incredibly significant in that, the RNC chairperson election is something that's really completely out of the mind of almost every Republican. This is like the really esoteric bits and pieces of how the Republican Party is running. And this time, for the first time I can really remember it, it became like a public issue.
Because it's not being ran well. So it's confusing as to why anyone would continue to vote for the same, especially when we have Harmeet as an option.
Correct. The results were many people felt the results were lacking. We can say though that, is it a complete failure under Ronna McDaniel? Not necessarily. Total voter turnout is up. Donations are up, but wins, people in office are down. Just a lot of people felt like we should have done better and that the emphasis should be placed elsewhere. And, there was criticism of what Ronna was spending on flowers and gifts and trips and stuff like that. And honestly, nobody would have cared about any of that if we'd been winning the seats we were projected to win. So, I think what happened is just it was too much of a hill to overcome in the short amount of time that Harmeet had to overcome it in order to win the nomination. And then the other factor of that is that those 3 representatives from each state or territory, they are not necessarily used to really dealing with the public. And in some cases, they're not even elected officials. They could just be party officials that don't have an office. And so to what extent do they really have to respond to the public themselves? Sometimes never. But, so public pressure doesn't mean as much to them. But I know that in the case of the leader, the chairperson of the main delegation, after the election happened in January and Ronna McDaniel was installed, the head of the main delegation for Republicans was voted out of their position because they didn't support because they supported Ronna McDaniel, because they didn't support me. So there is a little bit of blowback there. But, you know, to answer your question, what I think happened is that it was too much of an obstacle to overcome the people who had already pledged their allegiance to Ronna McDaniel. And I think that the fact that 50 people voted against her is significant. And I'm hoping that it will lead to increased emphasis on the areas where Harmeet did want more emphasis, namely grassroots activism and coordination. And I'm optimistic that that things will go better in the next election cycle. But at the same time, I don't believe they will go better if we just do the same things and hope for the best. We need to make changes, and we need to not only at the party level, which is hard for me to speak at because, you know, while I am registered Republican, I don't have any official capacity with the Republican Party. But I feel that the Republican Party needs to do a better job of grassroots reach out. And I think that they really need to seriously consider in the states where it already exists. And this is a controversial topic, and it's basically early voting. Like if you're in a state that has early voting, that has early in-person voting or mail-in voting, you know, a lot of Republicans in the last election cycle didn't use that. And I think we need to change that. And we do need to vote early where the existing rules permit it.
That's Harmeet did that. That's why she was successful with what she did. But well, at least she was trying to do that, and she was advocating for that. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you, but I also feel the frustration of understanding that does lead to a lot of issues and makes the election more open to fraud. So yes, we can either fight it and know that we're fighting something to try to make the election more secure, or we can accept it and take advantage of it, just as the Democrats are doing.
Correct. And, you know, personally, do I want ballot drop boxes to exist? Absolutely not. You know, do I want voting month to exist? Absolutely not. Do I want universal mail-out ballots to be there? No, I don't. But if every Republican just says, I'm going to vote on election day, and that's when I'm going to vote. Well, you know, let's say you were lucky enough to vote, you know, you live to be 100 years old and you vote in 40 federal elections over the course of 80 years. All right. Would you say you have a pretty good record if you only missed one of those 40 elections?
Yeah.
You would, right? Okay. Well, that's still 2.5% that you didn't vote. Mm-hmm. And 2.5% is a really big difference in an election. Mm-hmm. Losing that many votes is a big difference. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I don't think that people look at it that way. Is that you really, you know, in an area where you can get your vote in early, I feel that you should, unless you're going to say this, I'm going to vote in person. I'm going to take the day off. It's going to be the only thing I do that day, and I'm going to get it done. And I look at something that happened in Arizona, in Maricopa County, which was a disaster, because now people running these elections have learned that, hey, all we have to do is sabotage the balloting process on election day, and we can disproportionately affect Republicans who vote. You know, what's going to come next? Are they going to start tripping power breakers and, like, you know, trying to drop the power to where the polling places are, or just running up and, you know, take out a substation? I don't know what they're planning. But they've already learned that they can print ballots at the wrong size, and they can have scanners that don't work, and they can have lines that are 4 hours, and they can, you know, and that people who said, I'm going to go and vote, it's going to be my first priority, I'm going to spend 2 hours, I'm going to get done, and weren't able to vote in Arizona because the machines didn't work. You know, how do you keep that from going to another place? And that's why I feel in the areas in which it already exists, we should, as Republicans, we should make an effort to do that. And one thing I didn't even talk about yet was ballot harvesting. We should be doing ballot harvesting where we can. Now, at the
where
same time, where it's legal, right? Now, at the same time, states should be states that have Republican state houses and state senates and ideally also a Republican governor or secretary of state should really be looking at adjusting their election laws to keep any of these voting processes from spreading, and then once they become in power, get rid of them where possible. Like if you're in a state and you can get rid of ballot drop boxes, do it. Absolutely do it. If you can get rid of, extended voting periods, get rid of it. And that should happen. And, the next thing they're going to try and sell to everybody is ranked choice voting. And that's just beyond horrible.
No, didn't Tyler Boyer make a presentation about that on the RNC thing, and he won? I thought he won over the RNC chairs, and they decided to be totally against ranked choice voting.
Correct. The RNC has come out against ranked choice voting. That is not going to stop the Democrats and the leftists and the Democrat Party from putting it out there as a solution, though. So the push for ranked choice voting is not going to come from the Republican Party. It's going to come from outside. It's going to come from, basically a whole bunch of, I envision will probably come from, a lot of dark money, Soros type organizations funding PACs that will then put it on the ballot, and then it'll be out there, and it'll just be, by having ranked choice voting, we'll never need runoffs. And with the money we save, we will fund unicorn transgender schools for everybody. It'll be something like that. And everything will be wonderful. And you'll get whatever you wanted. And it'll be perfectly safe and fair. But that's not the way it will work.
I see. Yeah, no, I understand. And for those who don't know ranked choice voting is like if you have 3 candidates, A, B, and C, you could say
you can have more, right?
Right, but then you would say, like, you would rank the candidate, like, oh, I want A, that's my first choice, B is my second choice, C is my third choice, and then whoever the first 2 that don't win, then they look at whatever the remaining
are. You basically, you basically, let's say we'll use your example of 3 candidates. So you pick your candidates in the order you want them, 1, 2, and 3. They tabulate the votes, and if nobody gets over 50% of the votes, all right, if nobody gets over 50%, they take the candidate with the lowest votes and they throw them out. Basically, they're now out of the running. But instead of having a runoff election, what they do is they take the candidate who had the fewest votes, they go to those ballots, and they see who was the second choice on those ballots. And then they assign that second choice from that candidate to the other 2. So.
And this creates a problem when you have, like, let's say you have a real Republican, a rhino, and a Democrat, right? And let's say it's a more conservative area, then maybe the Republican, so maybe the Republican will get 46% of the votes, and then the rhino will get 30-something%, and then the Democrat will get the rest. Right. Then the Democrat will fall out, but all the Democrats, their second choice would be the rhino. So then in the end, the rhino wins. And that's why
the rhino ends up winning, even though the state area is tremendously Republican. And
could that be beneficial to Republicans, though, where, like, we might not get an extreme Democrat?
You're right, though. You're 100% right. I mean, it does work against the extreme left as well. It's harder now for an extreme left candidate to get under ranked choice voting. It would be harder for an extreme left candidate to get elected as well. But I really believe that the view of the left is that, on balance, ranked choice voting
one of us cut out.
A rhino or a moderate Democrat are really not going to have any real opposition to the plans of the far left. So I think they look at it as a really good means to get their primary opposition out of the way. But you're 100% correct that it basically disenfranchises the far right and the far left. I'm going to say the far, not the far right, but the people who are on the right spectrum of political spectrum and the left, because it really just makes all the voting go towards the center. And you can think of it as being, I just look at it, you just too much, you would have like the results come out there and then, oh, these were the last two candidates. If those were the two choices I had, I would have voted the other way. People don't understand it. It's not as transparent. And we used an example with 3 people. You can have 4 people in the field. You can have 5 people in the field. And
how does that, I understand how it affects like the 3-person thing, but I haven't really sat down to think about how it would affect a race with 4 to 5 candidates if they were spread out.
It would be exactly the same, and just the 4th one, the bottom one would drop off. Let's say you started with 5.
No, I understand the process, but what's the final result? You always end up with the most middle candidates, no matter.
And generally you do, depending upon who's running. I mean, if you had a candidate selection where there's only 1 Republican running and 4 Democrats, well, yeah, in that case, it might go to the Republicans sooner. But operationally, the Democrats are organized enough that they wouldn't torpedo their own chances in a ranked choice voting. But there's going to be people are going to come out. We're going to hear more about it in this election cycle, and we're going to hear more about it after that. But just the more you learn about it, the more I think everybody realizes this is not something we should be playing with. Elections in America have a standard of a very clear choice of you marking a ballot for the person you want in a field. And when you start doing numbers and assigning it, that choice becomes less clear. And we are ready. So many Americans already are skeptical of the process of how the ballots are tabulated, that to me, introducing another factor of like, well, your ballot was tabulated and this was your choice, but now we got to worry about
going back and retabulating differently. Yeah.
Then you got like, did the second choice get tabulated right? Did the third choice? It's just less transparent. It's just more obfuscation. It is not worth the headache.
Do you have any idea as to why the Democrats would want that type of voting? Because it doesn't sound good for Republicans or Democrats, actually.
Well, they want it because it allows them to, in the states where, a state like Alaska, it allows them to keep a more moderate person in office instead of somebody who would be a more conservative Republican. You basically
do you think they do a better job getting candidates? Like, do you think the left does a better job organizing candidates, getting them to quit a race in order to help out a different Democrat candidate and stuff like that?
I think you would, but like in theory, you don't see, if ranked choice voting is so great, why aren't they using it in New York? Why aren't they using it in these states that are, why aren't they using it in Illinois? Why aren't they using it in the states that are, if it's so great, well, just, let all the states that are Democratic, solid Democrat states, they can try it. Convince people, it's not. It's something that's being promulgated for use in states in which the Democrats are behind and want to gain an advantage. It's not something they're saying, this is New York, this is a Democratic stronghold. To keep it Democratic, we're gonna do ranked choice voting. They're not saying that anymore because it doesn't make sense.
They're only pushing it. They're only pushing it in Republican strongholds, and it's Democrats pushing it in Republican. Is there any country or is there any place in the world that you know of that does effectively do ranked choice voting?
I think there are some places that do it, and and even in America, well, Alaska does it, right? So every state does have the ability to choose its own election laws. And I can see the argument for Alaska. There's, if you have an election in November and then you're going to have another election in December for a runoff. And Alaska's people are spread apart. There's a lot of issues with having a physical vote. Weather can be a factor. I can at least mentally understand why they would say, we really don't want to have another runoff election in December. Yeah, I can understand that. Maybe that was part of the selling point for Alaska, but there's no reason to do that in Texas or in Colorado or in Arizona or any place else.
Could there be any constitutional issues when you have to go back to look at like the second choice of a failed candidate? Does that kind of show the identity of the original voter, or could it potentially?
No, there's no constitutional issues that I know of. There's nothing about releasing the name of the voter or anything like that. The states have really broad leeway in how they want to set their election laws. So if the states want to do ranked choice voting, they can. If the states, unfortunately, if the states want to have unsecured ballot boxes open for an entire month and mail out ballots to every name on the voting rolls, like they do in California, they can do that. In California, you can even print your own ballot on your home printer. And then you have ballot harvesting. It's crazy. It's lunacy. And of course, no voter ID, which the vast majority of people in America are in favor of the concept of voter ID. And yet we don't.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen that Ami Horowitz video, like from forever ago, where he asked all those liberal college students, "Are you in favor of voter ID?" And they're like, "No, it's super racist." And then he goes to Harlem, and all the Black people are like, "What do you mean, Black people
can't get
have
an ID?"
Yeah.
That's stupid.
It's a great video. It's a great video, but no, it's true. So what's your opinions on, I have to ask, I'm sure you get this a lot, on DeSantis? Would you ever sway Trump to DeSantis? Could you see yourself wearing a work suit at DeSantis rally?
So here's the thing, I'm an America First candidate. That's who I'm going to support. I'm an America First supporter. I'm going to support the person who I feel can do the best job for America First policies. Right now, that's unquestionably President Trump. Unquestionably. Now, if for some reason President Trump were to drop out of the race, I would reevaluate from the remaining candidates to determine who I would support. I think that there's another issue, though, with DeSantis that I think that many people don't even consider. He's been very effective as a governor, but he's been effective as a governor in a state in which he has no real opposition. And that, I mean, he doesn't have an opposition.
Did he barely win his first time at winning as governor?
Yes.
And it was only because of a November surprise, wasn't it? Didn't his candidate, there was like some sexual...
Well, no, that came later. But, Floridians barely escaped having a governor who would later be found passed out naked in a hotel with a male escort. Yeah.
Right.
That was many memes were made that day. Many memes were
made that day. I'm sure by you too. You were all over Reddit that day.
I made one or two. I think I did make one or two that day. So, what I'm saying that is he didn't have, think about President Trump. In the first 2 years of his presidency, he had not only Democrats against him, but he had the media against him, and he had his own party against him. I mean, let's face it, Paul Ryan basically didn't let things go through the House like he should have. The Senate wasn't as supportive as it could have been. And admittedly, some of that is due to the whole Russia hoax scare until that was, thoroughly debunked. So, he had people operating against him, and DeSantis didn't really have that. And he hasn't gone through the scrutiny. I mean, I believe that the Democrat political machine, to whatever extent you believe it exists, to whatever extent that it's tied in to three-letter agencies, DOJ, FBI, to whatever extent it exists, okay, they have already had their crack at President Trump. And they've learned how effective putting pressure like that can be on someone, right? They haven't come up with anything against President Trump yet. They've tried, two impeachment processes, investigations, still haven't found anything. And I have no confidence. I mean, I certainly expect that whoever the next Republican nominee is, they're going to get the same treatment, whether that's President Trump, whether it's Ron DeSantis, whether by some sheer, I can't even imagine. Look, I'm trying to think of how could Nikki Haley become the presidential nominee. I can't even think of a situation in which she would be. All right, so whoever it is, the point is, whoever it is, they are going to come at that person with the full pressure of what those agencies can create. And I don't have confidence that Ron DeSantis will be able to withstand that pressure to the extent that President Trump already has already shown the ability to do so. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But I just don't, I think that President Trump knows it's a known quantity. We know they're going to go after him, but there's nothing more new that they can find. They've already found everything that's out there. This is not like the never-ending hunt for documents at whatever house the Biden stayed at, where, each month we find another batch of Biden documents.
I know. Do you think he's going to remain in office all the way to 2024? Do you think we're going to have our first female president soon?
That's a very good question. It's increasingly looking like they're setting him up with the ability to gracefully exit and not run again in 2024.
Wouldn't that be a terrible way for America to have our first female president, to not even have her elected into office, to have
any way that Kamala Harris becomes president is a terrible way for us to have our first female president. I mean, just any way. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how she does it. It's just not right. Primary. She was polling at 2% and dropped out of primary. To win her own state of California.
If you had to choose any female to run the country, which female would it be?
Carrie Lake.
Really? Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool. Why Carrie Lake over like Kristen Noem or I always think Condoleezza Rice, but she hasn't really been in.
Carrie Lake has America First policies that I think are in some cases are even stronger than President Trump's.
What did you think of her Arizona lawsuits?
I think that if they were ever to be heard fairly and on their merits, that she would prevail. I believe that there is an incredible degree of judicial trepidation about actually hearing the case on the merits. And because I think that they'll just try and say, we're not going to grant the appeal. We're not going to grant the appeal, because if they ever really had to hear it, then the evidence would come forth. And if the evidence comes forth, I think that the case is very convincing that the election was run poorly. And I think it's a disservice to Maricopa County too, the citizens of Maricopa County, because if a judge were to hear to actually listen to the evidence, one potential finding could be that the current Maricopa County is just incapable of running its elections fairly, and that their elections have to be supervised or run by some outside agency for a period of years until it can be shown that they've regained a sense of competency that will allow them to run their elections in a fair and efficient manner.
I think that has constitutionally been done before in Georgia, if I remember correctly. There was accusations that they were being racist in, I think, either drawing their maps or whatever it was, but they had some oversight for a while and it was considered constitutional. But yeah, I agree. And also another issue is just the election judges. So Carrie Lake is constantly in front of Judge Tucci, and it's like every time she has an issue in Maricopa, they automatically put her in front of that judge. And that judge, I've actually also helped an attorney who was in front of that judge. He is the most biased judge I have ever seen on a bench. It's quite terrifying. Like, he will bend over backwards to come up to the wrong answer so long as it helps the person that he wants to win. Quite amazing. So
yeah, I think the American judicial system on a whole does work very well, but there are instances in which bias like that can be present and is difficult to get around. Very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So all right. Any final remarks that you would want to leave people on? Anything that you think that we as a people can do in our hometowns to help make America better, like do grassroots stuff? Because that's what you were on about in the beginning of this.
I think that's a tremendous place for everybody to focus, is to focus on in your local town, in your area. The other thing I think that people should explore is, think about this. This next election cycle, again, of course, it's going to be called the most critical election ever of our time, but it seems that that's been the trend. But we're really always as close to the precipice. We're like driving along a cliff, and the leftists are trying to get us to steer off it, and we're trying to stay on the road. And I think that people should really dip your toe in the pool of political activism and see if you can find something that works for you. It can be something as simple as volunteering to do, with your local party or a candidate that you support, to do door knocking, to do phone banks, to do something that will get you directly involved in real, in the physical world in doing political activism. Now, what I do historically primarily has just been, online presence and type of, social, I guess the word that gets used is influencer, doing that kind of thing. But this last election cycle, I wanted to do more, and I don't want to make it seem like what I contributed was anything really great or anything, but there were 4 weekends in a row where I drove out to Phoenix and I was doing door knocking in the Phoenix area for candidates in Arizona, coming from San Diego. So,
huge.
But there are people that are doing door knocking all summer long. I was doing it in, October, late September, October, and people are doing it in July and August and when it's just deathly hot out there. But, people should find out if there's something like that you can do. Maybe you want to get involved in just something that's as simple as voter registration. You're not necessarily trying to convince people about a viewpoint or about a candidate, as you are just saying, are you a conservative? Would you like to register with the Republican Party? Increasing the voter rolls for Republicans is something is only going to be a net positive. So, we definitely, everybody's only got so many hours in the day. That's the truth. But maybe we can spend fewer hours watching Netflix in a week and doing something political. And so if you find that you're going to like it, keep in mind that you're not going to be, not everybody's going to be like ultra committed or doing 20, 30 hours a week or 10 hours a week even. The levels of activism and the levels of support you can give are going to be basically whatever a party's going to take whatever you offer. If you can only help 5 hours a week or 4 hours a week or 1 day a month, that'll work. But find out if you like it, because if 100 people out of every 100 people who try it, some people find it's just not for them, but some will find I like this. And some will find, hey, I really like it and I want to do a lot more of it. And increasingly, there's a lot of stuff that you can do, from home too, like phone banking from home that works.
It's true.
So there's a lot of options there. And I would just encourage everybody to get out there, and find out about what you can do in politics, not just what I was just talking about there is more like for the national races, but what's going on in your local area, what's happening there. You can have a greater influence there than you can a national one. And
school board is so important, and we're like just learning that.
And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to be, if possible, don't be afraid to be visibly conservative. And what do I mean by that? Like, I know that there are a lot of people who work in a job where they couldn't really wear a Trump hat going into work. Unfortunately, that exists, where there can be professional backlash, and not everybody has the freedom to do that, which is a sad thing because they should. But if you do have the option to do it, and when you do, consider it. I mean, you could, like I said, you could have, a hat like the Save America hat, or I don't know. I mean, anything you want. You could, if you want to get a little more, you have a Let's Go Brandon hat. So, any type of, where's Hunter? You can have any type of hat like that. You just wear it out when you go out. It's a subtle, it's a little type of thing. You're not going to offend any kids. People who know, and you just, you really just, I think you do something good when you're out in public as an America First supporter, and you're not ashamed of it. It lets people simultaneously know that there are other people out there like that, and they can't just paint you with a broad brush that like everybody who likes Trump is a racist, xenophobic boogeyman. You can't do that.
Right.
When people are actually confronted with a Trump supporter in public, and they have to, they can't just start screaming at you. They're going to have to it doesn't work that way. And
they could. It would be kind of weird though.
But like I said, I know not everybody can do that, but that is another thing people can do.
I agree. I think it's great advice, and go out there, phone bank, knock, see if you like it, wear a MAGA hat. I think that's all great advice. I love it.
Yeah, because you're not going to look back 20 years from now and say, oh man, I should have watched Yellowstone some more. I should have watched it again, or I should have done this again. I could have spent more time playing Minecraft or Roblox or whatever. I mean, at some point, I don't think you're going to look back on it and say, I regret supporting causes that I cared about. I just, if you can see yourself in that place, if you're supporting a cause that you care about, 10, 15, 5 years from now, you're not going to look back and say, I really regret spending time supporting that cause that I cared about. And if you care about America, it's time to support the cause.
100% agree. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your time. Everybody go follow Brick Suit on Twitter. Brick
with the underscore
suit. Brick_suit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Take care. Have a great night.
Have a good night. All right. We'll end it here, Henry. Thank you so much.